Hey everyone, it's Triple Mango Threat or Ashley, and today I want to talk about Kamiz Obscura Oculus and what cards could be put in the deck. Now, a disclaimer, the deck lists for the Commander decks have not been released, so before you go out and buy these cards, I suggest waiting for those deck lists. But let's continue with reading Kamiz. So this is a 2/4 Cephalid Rogue that costs 1 white, blue, black, and it says whenever you attack, target attacking creature can't be blocked this turn. It connives, and then we choose another attacking creature with lesser power. That creature gains double strike until end of turn, and to have a creature connive, we're going to draw a card, discard a card, and then if we discarded a non-land card, we get to put a +1/+1 counter on that creature. So we can make a huge creature unblockable, and then something with lesser power, we can give a +1/+1 counter and give it double strike, so this deck can deal a big punch. So one of the cards I want to mention is Horde Robber. This is for 1 and a black, a 1/3 Tiefling Rogue. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, create a treasure token. If this is that lesser power creature, we can give it double strike, and so then we're going to create 2 treasure tokens whenever this deals combat damage. Next we have Precinct Captain. This is a 2/2 for 2 white. It's a human soldier with first strike, and when it deals combat damage to a player, we create a 1/1 white soldier creature token, so we can potentially give this double strike if it's the lesser power of the 2 creatures we're targeting with our commander, and get 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens whenever we're dealing combat damage to a player. Augury Adept, whenever it deals combat damage to a player, we're going to reveal the top card of our library, and then we'll put it into our hand. We gain life equal to its converted mana cost, and since we're not technically drawing any cards, this could miss some triggers, hopefully that our commander wouldn't be able to get, maybe a Consecrated Sphinx going on there, but that means we can also miss some draw triggers if they're in the deck. But the life gain is going to be really cool because assuming we have huge creatures in the deck, that's a lot of life to be gained. Next we're talking about Graveblade Marauder. This has Death Touch, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, that player loses life equal to the number of creature cards in our graveyard. I'll mention another card in this deck list, but this can potentially be a deck where we want our creatures in our graveyard and we're able to bring them back constantly, get them back to our hand, discard them. They're going to be all over the place. Next, we're talking about Liliana's Reaver. So for 2 and 2 black, we have a Death Touch 4/3 zombie. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card, and we're going to create a 2/2 tapped black zombie creature token. So this can end up being that player discarding 2, and we make 2 2/2 black zombies that are tapped. And I actually never seen this card, but it is Drider. It came out from the Adventures in the Forgotten Realms set. It's a 4/3 with reach, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, we create a 2/1 black spider creature token with menace and reach, so that can end up making us 2 spiders, which is really cool. There's Fallen Shinobi, which is now a $6 card, which is kind of crazy, but when it deals combat damage to a player, that player exiles the top 2 of their library, and until end of turn we can play those without paying their mana cost, so that could be 4 cards that we're looking at, which is very powerful. It's also a 5/4, so that's 10 damage if they take that, so it's likely they're going to block, so this is a great creature to potentially be in the deck. Next we're talking about Woebearer. So whenever this deals combat damage to a player, we can return target creature from our graveyard to our hand, and this is one of those things I think would be really cool because it's giving us more ways to discard a non-land card, which could go into our graveyard, and this is going to give us 2 options of that. Next we're talking about Necropolis Regent. So whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, put that many +1/+1 counters on it, so we can potentially give a creature ×2 of this, which is really cool. Spawning Kraken. Whenever a Kraken, Leviathan, Octopus, or Serpent you control deals combat damage to a player, create a 9/9 blue Kraken creature token. This probably will not be a sea creature theme. Most likely it's just going to be whatever good stuff can get double strike or can take advantage of these +1/+1 counters we're handing out. But imagine just dealing combat damage with this twice, and we make 2 9/9s. We will definitely become the target of the game. Fel Shepherd. So I've never seen this card before, but it looks really cool. So when it deals combat damage to a player, we can return to our hand all creatures that were put into the graveyard from the battlefield this turn. So we can pay a black to sack another creature, and target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn, and this is an 8/6, so it's going to deal a huge amount of damage if it goes through. But if we have ways to sacrifice our creatures, we can have a lot of ETBs going on, and again we're discarding a lot of stuff, which won't work with Fel Shepherd, but I can see a lot of discarding sacrifice working with this deck. And the next card we're talking about is Lord of the Void. I'm pretty sure I've seen this before, but it's really powerful, especially for $23. When it deals combat damage to a player, we're going to exile the top 7 cards of that player's library, and we can put a creature card from among them onto the battlefield under our control. It's a 7/7 flyer, and imagine getting 2 of these triggers. That's really powerful. Sphinx Ambassador. I had this in my Braids deck, and it used to not be a $9 card, but when it deals combat damage to a player, we search their library for a card, then that player chooses a card name. If you searched for a creature card that doesn't have that card name, you can put it onto the battlefield under your control. This is crazy cool. and just doing it once is awesome, but getting double strike on this, and it's a flyer, that's 10 damage, grab 2 creatures. If they can't name it correctly, we get to keep them. Super powerful. Mind Leech Mass. This recently seen a spike due to the ninjutsu fad going on, and so whenever this deals combat damage to a player, we can look at their hand, and we can cast a spell from among those cards without paying its mana cost. So imagine getting 2 of these triggers. It's really good. Scion of Darkness. This is an 8 mana spell for a 6/6, which can look kinda iffy, but it's a 6/6 with trample and also cycle for 3 if we need to. But when it deals combat damage to a player, we can put target creature card from that player's graveyard onto the battlefield under our control. So let's just take 2 of the creatures from their graveyard. That sounds great. And next we're talking about Artisan of Kozilek. So whenever we cast this spell, we can return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. And it has Annihilator too. So this doesn't work with double strike besides dealing somebody 20 damage, which is very powerful. So next we're talking about Tortured Existence. So this is what I was talking about. Grabbing creatures from our graveyard, switching them between our hands and our graveyard for only 1 black. And so we're constantly able to grab something to discard that's a non-land with our commander. We give something a +1/+1 counter. We can give something double strike. This is probably one card I think would be really cool for the deck. Doom Necromancer. So this is a bit of a slow one, but we can pay a black and tap it to sacrifice this to return target creature from our graveyard to the battlefield. So this is probably another way to start getting our creatures back besides to our hand. Curator of Mysteries. So since we're discarding cards, we can actually start scrying from the top of our library with this cool creature. And as I mentioned, with discarding, we have Archfiend of Ifnir. Whenever we cycle or discard another card, we can actually put -1/-1 counters on each creature our opponents control. This is super powerful, especially for only $1, and if we discard once each turn, we can get rid of their tokens super quick, and again, this is just building up each one of our turns. Karmic Guide, this seen a recent reprint from Crimson Vow, and this says whenever this enters the battlefield, we can return target creature from our graveyard to the battlefield. There's also Moldrifter, so since we have a lot of interaction with our graveyard, supposedly, we can end up just paying 2 and a blue to draw 2, have this sacrificed, and maybe we can bring it back with something else, such as Sun Titan. This is a great way to bring something with mana value 3 or less from our graveyard to the battlefield. It won't be able to work on Moldrifter, sadly, but this can work with our lands, anything that's a permanent. So this is always a cool card to work with. Next we're talking about Nas Hall Primal. So this is another great way to draw cards in the deck. It's also a 7/7, so giving this double strike is going to deal 14 damage. And we're discarding cards if we want to exile it and return it to the battlefield tapped at the next end step, so this can be a great way to protect it. And also it gives us no max hand size, which could be a bad thing if we're looking to discard our hand, if we're capped at that 7 hand size. But also when our opponents cast a non-creature spell, we're drawing, so that's going to be really helpful. And the last card I want to talk about is Victimize. Again, we're doing this back and forth thing of taking our creatures from our hand, the battlefield, graveyard, so this is going to let us choose 2 target creature cards in our graveyard. All we have to do is sacrifice a creature, and if we do, we return the chosen cards to the battlefield tapped. So that's going to trigger ETBs that we have, and maybe even other cards that can interact with those creatures. Thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to check out the next commander I'm going to talk about, which is Kit Kanto, which loves to goad our opponent's creatures. So if you'd love to see that one, I'll have a pop-up right now going to that video. And thank you to the patrons who help support this show. And thank you to the viewers who help by liking, commenting, and subscribing, and watching the video all the way through. I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.